So, as I was saying, 17024 is actually just an international standard that sets the benchmark criteria for an organization that's certifying individuals, and it includes all the requirements for the development and the maintenance, which is all part of an effective, again, there's that word, certification scheme for persons for which the certification is based. So why is this important to you? Why do you care? Well, I'm going to tell you why you should at least, and perhaps you'll be enrolled in this. To those of you, folks that will get this certification that has the ANSI accreditation behind it, it's designed to help increase your acceptability in the job market. It's designed to help improve professional attitude development, to offer increased recognition in the employment market, better salaries and position, increased confidence in the people performing the task, worldwide even recognition and credibility, and ongoing development in the skills and experience. So one of the things that this whole exercise that ISO put together that was so important was to was recognizing that a lot of people have a piece of paper that says what they know, but the question is what do they know how to do? And if you're an employer, and perhaps some of you have been in this situation, you hire somebody and you'd like to know, well, do they already know how to do certain things? Or are you going to have to train them even after they've gone through this supposed certification process, and you're going to have to start from scratch and teach them, you know, everything they really need to know how to do, not just what they needed to know. So that's the first part. As far as benefits to the overall industry, it's actually going to ease in hiring skilled technicians, people that have the abilities to do certain things. It's going to hopefully ease the investment in doing training, you know, by your company for people you hire. Help ensure quality of services and that it's a well-planned process. Enhance confidence of the employee, the person that's actually doing the work. It's something. There's something motivating about having a credential that has this kind of expectation that if you own that credential, that it makes you just feel better about who you are and the work you do. Improve quality and effectiveness in those operations, savings in terms of time and money, and hiring is based on competence and not just on a qualification. So where are we with this whole process? Well, we started having to do a gap analysis to see how far away we were from it, even beginning. And so we've gone through that. It included a micro-level survey of all the things we do at NRPP, and going through training on the whole standard. And then we had to develop a competency exam. And how many of you have heard this exam? The new exam is awful. You better heard that? Got some folks out there? All right, so let me share with you a little bit about that. I can assure you that it's been looked at over and over and over by a lot of people, including a special committee that we have to have that's part of the Certification Council. And we keep tabs on every question, on how many people have taken that question, how many people answered A, how many people answered B, C, and D, and we can go through all of the different exam forms, and we even have the ability to have it show up in red on our staff interface, where we can see any questions that are troublesome. And we've gone back and looked at those questions. And we did have one, I'll give you an example, where we discovered after the fact and gave it some thought that it had 2 answers that could be correct. So what we did is we then did an analysis on the people who had taken the exam up to that point, and we determined that there was one individual that picked what we thought was the wrong answer, but could be right, and missed passing the exam by 1 question, And so therefore, we had to go back to that person and, as ANSI requires, tell them that they actually passed. So we had to make that correction. And that's part of the oversight and the accountability that we're held to by ANSI. So even though we're not quite ANSI accredited yet, we have to demonstrate that we're doing these things before we send in our final application, because they want to see, you know, the processes that we're already involved in and verify that we are walking the walk and, as well as talking the talk. So we have looked at the exam, and I can just share with you that part of what's different about it is, in the past, there were things on the exam that you needed to know that the job task analysis group said, well, are those things really important for somebody who's doing this job? And the answer to a lot of those items was no. I mean, in order to place and retrieve radon tests, do you really need to know the entire decay chain of uranium-238 all the way to polonium-210 and beyond? Do you really need to know that to do the job? And so the group said no. So a lot of the things that were taught before are no longer on the exam. What's on the exam are the procedures and the things you need to do according to the standard. So there's a little bit of a lag time between the trainers, God bless them, who are trying to figure out, because we can't tell them what's on the exam. ANSI doesn't allow that. So they're having to figure out, well, okay, are they teaching the correct things? And there's also the fact that some instructors have been doing this for a long, long time and are used to teaching a certain way, and they feel really good about certain topics, and perhaps they spend more time on those than they should for this particular exam. So we're going through a learning curve on that end. But after the exam or the job task analysis goes through to create this scheme, and they put together an exam blueprint, which is, I'll get into in just a minute. Then we have to go through and validate the questions by weighting which ones are the most important to the job. And then there's a standard setting where they go through and actually give the what we call the cut score. So you're used to in school having perhaps 75 as a passing grade. Well, when the cut score is developed for each of these exams, that's not the way they do it. The psychometricians that we have to hire in order for to do this process go through and, based on the weighting of the different questions, may determine that a particular exam has more difficult questions than easy questions, or vice versa. So perhaps you need to score higher on one exam than you do on another. Okay? So we have done all these that are checked off. We've done that standard setting. We've done the final report. And we've actually had the exams have been approved by the Certification Council, and as you know, we are now offering those exams. Then our consultants that we've hired are helping us complete our initial audit process, evaluating our readiness, and we have submitted our initial application already, so all those are complete. ANSI then takes that initial application and determines whether we cut muster to go further, and they have said yes. So where we are now is we are finishing up our final application, which is like putting together a book of all the things that they require and we have to submit. And maybe a lot more than you wanted to know, but I just felt like it would be helpful for you to explain, or for me to explain a little bit about what we're doing and why. So we have to have a clear policy manual, a candidate handbook. Everything has to be transparent. So some things that perhaps dropped through the cracks in the past because we didn't understand the importance, we have gotten an education on those things going through this. And then everything has to go through approval by the Certification Council, at least the big deals. So what do we need to do? We need to submit that final application. We had our consultant here to talk with our Certification Council yesterday, and he's telling us, in fact, I was even a little stunned, that we should be ready by December 25th. That's his goal. Now, if we miss it by a week or so, that's possible, but we're going to get that final application in, if not before Christmas, sometime within a week or two after. Then they're going to go through their assessment of how we did. They're going to then come in and do an on-site assessment. Right now they're done through Zoom. It's a 2-day process with 2 auditors, and our goal is to have our final accreditation hopefully by the end of April. It could take longer depending on how many things we have to go back and redo to satisfy them. So what does this mean? What is going to happen to you if you already have, say, a measurement professional or a mitigation specialist that you've had and maintained for years? You don't have to do it over, okay? What will happen is when you renew, after we get the accreditation, you will now have an ANSI accredited credential. New people coming in are going through the process we're in now. But we may be doing some other things as part of the Certification Council decisions. For example, measurement professionals as well as field technicians may be required within that first period before the next renewal, for our first renewal, if they haven't gone through already, a device-specific course, 2-hour course, okay, to make sure that you're really familiar with your device that you're using, or devices. And then after that, as I said, we'll have audits. Okay, the next thing, and I know I'm probably running, how much time do I have left? Anybody? Jane, are we okay? 18 minutes. Okay, I'll talk faster. So the next thing I want to go through is what was the radon mitigation compliance inspector, and we are now referring to it as the soil gas mitigation compliance inspector. Anybody know why we've changed the name? Vapor intrusion. What we realized is that the process for verifying a system that was installed for vapor intrusion is pretty much the same for a radon mitigation system, and therefore we wanted to make sure we included that in this credential. This will not be part of the initial application into ANSI, so for the immediate, when we do get our accreditation, this one will come along shortly thereafter. It will be part of an update to our accreditation as we move forward. This is for people who would inspect active soil system, depressurization systems to verify if the installation complies with the ANSI R soil gas mitigation standard. And there would be an app, a phone app, an inspection app that would be available to people that have this certification to perform a visual assessment and generate a compliance report. A visual assessment, just like a home inspection is, so to speak. It's a visual. You're not going in and tearing anything apart, but you're going to perform a site assessment of the system. The role of this person that would get the certification is to perhaps represent home buyers by verifying if the system is installed, that was installed as part of a home sale, meets the minimum standard. So we all know that typically the seller pays for the mitigation system, the buyer moves in, after the dust is settled, they look around at that mitigation system and start asking themselves some questions, and they look on the internet and they go, holy cow, this thing isn't designed anything the way I read on the internet it should be designed, and I'm concerned. And then perhaps we get a complaint at NRPP because this mitigation system has problems. And almost all of the complaints that we get on mitigation systems could have been avoided if somebody would have looked at the system prior to the closing and representing that buyer and verified whether the system was compliant. Really, they could have all been avoided for the most part if that had happened. It could have all been worked out. People call back, need to do this, change that, and bingo, it's done. But typically what happens is that buyer is too caught up with everything else and they're not paying attention until after the fact. So that's a role for this particular credential. Help resolve citizen complaints to NRPP. So we do get complaints. Perhaps we need to get somebody out to look at something if we can't verify it with photos and video from the person doing the complaints. And then you've been hearing, and we'll have a presentation tomorrow on the fact that we are working with Indiana, the state of Indiana, on a program to do compliance inspections for the state licensing program. So this is I think has a lot of potential. And what do I hear as the executive director and what does staff hear all the time? Well, gee, you know, I really don't want to renew my NRPP certification because what does it really matter? Everybody just does the sloppy job and does things half-assed, and I'm trying to compete with that, right? So, hello, here's an opportunity where we can level the playing field, and that's what we're up to. To get this certification, as we're rolling out, it's a 2-year certification like our others. Prerequisite is you would need to have an NRPP certification in measurement or mitigation, or approved relevant radon experience. For example, if you are licensed in Pennsylvania and you're not part of the NRPP program, well, that would count as a prerequisite to get into this program. Complete an 8-hour compliance inspector initial exam prep course. We just had the first one. Thanks to the folks at KSU who did a lot of work in a hurry to get all that put together, and from what I hear, did a good job. Is anybody in that class? Anybody here in that class? Okay, so I hope you found it helpful. I think that you're going to play a big role in helping us level the playing field out there, and I appreciate the fact that you came in on the first go. And so after that's happening, or you take the course rather, then you need to take a passing or get a passing score on the exam. The exam we intend to have ready by November. It's going through a final process. Remember, we have these subject matter experts that are going through and right now weighting all of the questions as difficulty, and that will determine what the passing score is. And then what we're looking at here is 4 hours for continuing education that is specific to this particular realm. So this is an opportunity for the trainers to put together some continuing education courses that will help you do your job better if this is something you're doing. And then, of course, adherence to the NRPP Code of Ethics. Exam blueprint, I won't get into the whole thing, but you can see we have domains, which are the general tasks. Under domains, we have subdomains, which are the smaller tasks that make up the general task. And then below that, we have knowledge statements, which are the things you need to know in order to be able to do these tasks. So obviously, identify the type of mitigation system, verify compliance, or the monitors and labels are compliant, and so forth. You can see them there. I'm not going to read them all. And how many questions will be in each area. It'll be a 125-question exam, and so those of you who went through the class, we intend to have it ready, if not by the 1st of November, certainly within a week or two after that. So the question comes up, well, do we really need all this? Do we really need to go this route? What do you think? Do you see things out there that concern you, get your blood kind of boiling, make you really mad that somebody installed a system like what you're looking at and you're trying to do a better job? Anybody ever have those feelings? So some of these are actual photos from some inspections we did in Indiana. Some of them are not. This particular one I thought was something. It was where they put the fan inside and they exhaust at grade level, and to get around what they thought they would get around, instead of calling it a radon system, they called it a moisture control system. So that meant that they weren't accountable for following the standard. How about that? Things like just slide the cord through the wall and plug it in. As you can see there underneath the fan, the cord on the right, it slides through the wall and then is plugged in, and we saw multiple instances where that had been done. Be sure to seal the sump lid. You can see masking tape, duct tape. You can see in the center there's a hole in the sump lid, and there's an electrical cable running in there. It wasn't sealed around. Those are some things that we saw on the systems that we inspected in Indiana, or our inspectors did. Do good work and don't forget to label it. Well, you can see the one on the left where the fan is on the outside and just dumps right there at the ground level, and it's sort of wired to a drop cord around the house, and they left it like that. The one in the attic where it comes straight over to the side there and then out, I'm sure that caused a little airflow obstruction there, but you can see the label was promptly put on the systems. There's just nothing on it except for what came from the label manufacturer. Make sure the suction point is well sealed. You can see that this one wasn't sealed. It was just tucked under the membrane. Here's one where the wiring was actually a drop cord that they did run through the conduit on the right where they plugged into the fan, but then it came out of that and just snaked around and through the access to the crawl space and plugged in. Here's again from the Indiana inspections. We'll have a presentation on that tomorrow. I hope you join us for that. You can see where, how they did the wiring there, which is a little scary. And this is one where if you look on at the receipt, this caused a fire. They had the installer use undersized wire, and it caused a small fire. Fortunately, it only cost a couple $100 to get things put back together again, and it didn't burn the house down. They also had a problem with the fact that the disconnect was too low to the ground. So that's what we're up to. And so quickly, if I have a cable up here for the phone, I want to show you briefly. Those of you who were in the class got to see this a little bit. Okay, can you switch over to this? Okay, thank you. So this is the phone app. It's got some work to be done on it yet. Those of you who are in the class probably discovered that. We're working with a developer now who's trying to finish it up. You can see that this is a page where you would have inspections that you started. If they've already been submitted, then you can view a PDF of the report. If not, they're pending, and you can go in and continue them. I'll go into one here for John Doe, and you can see the areas that we have: general information, system monitoring label, duct piping, exhaust termination, ASD fan, submembrane system, and electrical and ceiling, floor, and wall cracks. It's set up where if one of the first things you do on general information is to identify what kind of system you're inspecting, or if it's a multiple system. It's got the submembrane as well as subslab. We had to put in whether it has a sump or doesn't have a sump because of the sump lid requirements, and we wanted to make sure that the inspector didn't have to wade through all the sump questions if there was no sump, or wade through all of the submembrane questions if there was no submembrane. So all of that is conditional. Whoops. All right. You can see that there's a list of questions there, and I know we're running a little short on time, but you can see that every section has some required photos. One of the things that we will be doing in the next iteration is if you find something that's non-compliant, then it will pop up for you to take a photo of that non-compliance, and that will be part of the report as well. That way, if, for instance, for your client or in the state of Indiana when we're working for the state, then we're able to see more clearly after the fact just what was the non-compliance in pictures. So then I'm going to go back here, if I can get back to my screen and go down here to, how about this one? So this is sort of what the report looks like. You can see that it's got an intro page. This particular page, I know you can't see that from back there, explains what the purpose of the inspection is and the methodology behind it and so forth. The different sections of the report have a color rating at the end as to whether they're green, meaning that everything in that section was compliant, and red would be, well, there's something at least in that section that wasn't compliant. And this is obviously not a real inspection because we didn't inspect this house. This is just some photos I had as I was playing around with the app. I chose subslab with a sump and submembrane also. You can see some of the questions there that are answered. And then these are required photos at the top on the system monitor and label. What happens is if something is non-compliant, it will show up in red, and if it's a specific section of the standard, then that will show up on the report where if somebody's reading it, they can reference back to, well, the standard says this about it, and so the client can see just what it is. And so you can go through every section, and then at the end, you actually get you have to sign off, the inspector signs off, so there's a signature and everything, and then it gives you a little report card of what areas are non-compliant. And that's pretty much where we're headed with it. Any questions? Yes. Oh, wow. That's a tough question, and I really can't answer that other than what we see. One of the things that the job task group envisioned was if you are, say, a measurement professional and you go do the initial test for a home buyer, and it comes back elevated, if you're able to persuade your client that they should have you come back and do the post-mitigation clearance test, then while you are there, you can inspect the system and give them a report to make sure that it meets the standards. How you price that would be up to you. As far as inspectors we hire for a state compliance program, we have a fee that once we can discuss with you if you're interested in that, or we think you have enough experience to do those, and the state's happy with it. We're hoping to work with more states. We have more states coming on board with licensure via certification and are using the ANSI standards. And as even other states that have been licensed for a long time, how many of you live in a licensed state that never does any compliance inspections? Or very seldom gets out in the field to see what's going on. And the reason is because they just don't have the personnel to get out there and do that. So we see this as a way to help the states with some boots on the ground to get those done. Yeah.
We can repeat them. Just repeat it.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a mic in the back. There's one over here. There's one over there.
Shout it out.
Or carry it around.
We'll repeat it.
or I'll repeat it.
Yep, either one.
I had a quick question. We've been really struggling with the new exam, our folks. Honestly, it's cost us tens of thousands of dollars in lost production. The exam fees aren't even, I mean, nobody even cares about that. It is what it is. There's a huge disconnect. You said the exam is good. You feel strongly about the exam. It's been backed up. It's been through committees. I don't see how in the world that any of the trainers can teach to an exam that they have no clue what they're teaching to. Our folks, we've probably had 10 people in it, and they've all failed, some by supposedly 1 or 2 points, 1 or 2 questions, whatever. I don't really mind that the questions are weighted or any of that, but I just don't see in the real, it's like me going to a math class and then the questions are for a geography class. I mean, we want to get mad at, at Spruce and Surdy and this and that and Kansas. They're working blind. And I understand that ANSI doesn't want them to know what the questions are, but what's the reality? What's the time frame of having the trainers have a clue what they're teaching?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking it. So what I can share with you as I mentioned to you, we're able to look at all the questions and see which ones people are missing. So we have sent out several bulletins to the trainers and said, we see a lot of people missing questions in this area. We see people having issues with that. Don't forget to point people to the appendices in the standard or the companion guidance in the standard, because there's helpful information in there that one needs to know. So for somebody to be able to do the job, they need to know how to do those tasks, and that's where the answers are. It's not that everything is in there. Obviously, if you don't understand how to do a pressure field extension test, it's kind of, we don't have yet. We'll have a presentation tomorrow on that, a way to assess whether someone really is understanding and knows how to do that task, but we're working on that. But the best advice I can give you is if some people go through a training and figure, well, if I sat through class and paid attention and took notes, then I should be in good shape for the exam. And we keep telling folks that, you've got to know the standard. So if you took the class and sat through, they're teaching you things perhaps are really helpful, but you also need to go back and review that standard and make sure you're familiar with it. One of the things we've done, the Certification Council, in trying to address, concerns, has just recently put the standards available on the exam, where once you open your exam screen, you have the standards there to scroll through and look at, so they're there for a reference. I think that's a great idea. I'm glad we got that done. But again, if you don't know the stuff you're looking, the answers are in the standard, or know where to find it, it's a timed exam, you need to know where to get those answers. Yeah.
Thank you, Dallas. Appreciate that answer. It's time-wise, we should wrap it up and go to the next presentation.
I'll get with you and we'll answer some more. Okay. Thank you very much.